Hello and welcome to Be Lifted Up, your guide to living an abundant life. I'm your host, Alfred Edmond Jr. And once again, we have a great show, a great guest, and a great topic that speaks directly to what it means to live an abundant life. Listen, we talk about faith and finance. We know that's the foundational theme of the show, but we also talk about purpose and fruitfulness. Not fruitfulness just for ourselves, but on behalf of others, because when all is said and done, we are here to serve. We are poured into that we might pour into others. So I want to point your attention as we talk about this show, this episode, to this scripture. Learn to do right, seek justice, defend the oppressed, take up the cause of the fatherless, plead the case of the widow. And that's from Isaiah 1:17. Because when it's all said and done, the wealth that we're blessed with is about what we do for others, not just what we can indulge in for ourselves. And today's guest, an inclusive transformational leader, an author, someone who's worked in the presidential administration of President Biden. Listen, I'm going to tell you more because her resume is extensive, but what we're going to be talking about today is the diversity of illusion. And we're going to talk about the question, what is the future of diversity, inclusion, and injustice in the current social and political environment, especially for us people of faith? Listen, stay tuned, sit tight. We'll be right back with this edition of Be Lifted Up Radio, your guide to living an abundant life. Hello and welcome back to Be Lifted Up Radio, your guide to living an abundant life. I'm your host, Alfred Edmond Jr. And today we're talking about what it means to operate, to serve, in a dramatically changed environment than from only maybe 7 to 8 months ago. Listen, we know that our faith and our service and our faith in God is unchanging because God is unchanging. Yet the way we serve, the way we represent the kingdom, the way we go about our business of service to humanity is always subject to change. God is always doing new things because the environment that we're working in requires change. Today's guest is a perfect example of what it means to be prepared for such change and to talk about what it means to be an inclusive transformational leader. Welcome to the show, Dr. Alaysia Black Hackett, a.k.a. Dr. Lacy, who's a leading authority on inclusive leadership and public systems change. Appointed by President Biden as the inaugural Chief Diversity and Equity Officer to the Secretary of Labor for 3 years from 2022 to 2025, she led the Biden-Harris administration's executive orders to broaden equity in the federal workforce. More currently, she's the author of a brand new book, The Diversity of Illusion, and we're going to talk about all that and more, including her walk as a woman of faith during this edition of Be Lifted Up. Welcome to the show, Dr. Black Hackett.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to have this conversation and to dive in.
You know, I looked at your resume. I mean, I'm seeing law degree. Did I get that right? Master's degree. You look like you're just finished your undergraduate degree in college. I don't know if you had time to do all that. But tell us a little bit about your journey from, I both for my shows, my other podcasts I do for Black Enterprise, and for this show, I get to really interview very accomplished people. And one of the things I'm always want to ask them is, what got them to the journey to who they became today? Most of us didn't wake up or was asked when we were 11 years old, what do you want to be when you grow up, Lacy? Right. And you didn't say, I want to be a transformative leader.
Right, you're right.
So talk about the journey from your PK, preacher's kid, to becoming now a JD, ordained minister, master's degree holder, all those things that make up the totality of what you did for the Biden administration and what you're doing now.
Absolutely. So I'll start as a child. I am a product of South Carolina. I am a Southern belle by all terms. Do not let the accent fool you, because I get to South Carolina, drink the water one day, and the twang is coming back. So I was born and raised in South Carolina, the sixth of seven children. To pastors, actually a male pastor, because the denomination I was raised in did not allow women in leadership or in any kind of roles that would consider being over men. And I say that because I think that also shaped who I am. But my moral and ethical compass comes from that foundation as a pastor's kid, learning and understanding servant leadership, understanding the need to seek justice for others and think about those who are less fortunate, even though I was not necessarily fortunate growing up in the South. And I also grew up in a time where the Confederate flag was a huge, and I know you say I look like I just got undergrad, but I actually was born in the 70s. And so I'm older than I look. And so I grew up in a time where the Confederate flag was a huge symbol in South Carolina, and there was a lot going on with it. So I grew up around it. I grew up around racism. Then there was just a culture of just the Southerners, right? And so that helped shape me. I can remember now that as a child, I used to say, I'm going to be the first Black female mayor of Florence. That's what my mindset was. But I didn't know how I was going to do it, right? Because everything around me just was one, demographic. But, coming from such a close knit family, I was the only one, I told you it was 7 of us, to leave home and go to college because I really felt like there was just something higher for me to do, push, and I needed to leave. So I went to the mountains of North Carolina, which is outside of Asheville, into a small college at the time in Cullowhee, North Carolina, which is only about 40 minutes from the Cherokee Reservation, the Eastern Band Cherokee. And there was, a large population of students, but very small number of students of color. And that's where I began to really start the journey of thinking about equality and equity across the board. From there, again, obtained my master's degree in public policy. Not sure exactly what I wanted to do, but I wanted to learn about local government. And then I went into higher education. So for 18 years, I was a senior administration in several colleges and universities across North Carolina and Virginia. And that's where I started the work of really advocating for students of color. I was always in these schools where there were a large number of Black and brown students, but there were no services or actions or activities for these students. And so just really getting into these colleges and universities, advocating for the students, even in the curriculum and how we taught the curriculum, really pushing for understanding a broader sense of what diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility is. And then of course Mike Brown got killed. And at the time I was raising 3 children, and one of them was a Black son. And I said to myself, I cannot unplug from being a Black woman. I have to go home and cry and look at the news over and over about what's going on to my people. So I said to myself, I'm not going to do DEIA anymore. I'm just not going to do it. And so I decided to pull myself out and returned back to Virginia. And all of a sudden, the governor's office had this cabinet level position available as he was developing a new diversity, equity, and inclusion office. And they called me and said, we would like to appoint you as the Deputy Chief Diversity Equity Officer for Governor Ralph Northam. And if you all remember, he was the blackface scandal governor. And he said, I'm not going to resign. I'm going to fix this. And he did everything in his power to fix it. And I was part of that. So that led me into government. And in the Commonwealth of Virginia, a governor can only run 1 term. So after that term, I was thinking I'm going back to higher ed. And God said no. And I received a phone call from the White House Personnel Office asking me if I would be interested in working for the Biden administration as the inaugural Chief Diversity Equity Officer, responsible for workforce, not just for the federal government, but we provided guidelines for all workforce across the country. So that's my journey. That's who I am. And in that, my faith is very strong. My father is a pastor. My husband is a pastor. I pastored for 17 years alongside my husband, but I retired after I was appointed by the president. So that is deeply in me. And when I think about what goes on right now, I know that there is a lot to be said where there's the intersectionality between faith and what is going on with equity right now. So I cannot wait to jump into this conversation.
Well, likewise. I mean, I tell people I'm from a small town on the Jersey Shore. One of the few of my family, certainly of my siblings, and most of my cousins who, like you said, went away after being in a great small town, but a small town. And ended up in New York City, which geographically is not far from where I grew up, but culturally and it's another world. But had
Right.
that same calling, like I don't know what's out there, but I know there's more that I'm meant to do, and that's an act of faith too, is being able to go like
Oh my God.
Abraham did and be saying, "You,
Yes.
I'm sending you someplace. It's a strange land. You ain't gonna know what's
Yes.
going, but that's where you need to go." And having the faith to be obedient and go do that when most of the people around you are like, "What's that brother? What's that boy doing? What's that girl?"
Right. Exactly.
So I absolutely
All the
appreciate you.
time. I'll obey God. I say my husband has an anointing for faith, but I'll obey God, but I'm not gonna be like Abraham and just walking. I would be like, do I go north, south, east, or west? You got to give me some guidance.
Some direction,
You're
right?
so right. Yes,
Right.
absolutely.
So listen, great. We're here with Dr. Black Hackett. We're talking about, when all said and done, leadership and servant leadership in particular, particularly in the current changing environment. Listen, I'm Alfred Edmond Jr. You're listening to another great episode of Be Lifted Up Radio. We're talking about equity, fairness, justice, and what we can be doing and should be doing as people of faith in the current environment. Sit tight, and we will be right back with Be Lifted Up Radio. Hello and welcome back to Be Lifted Up Radio. I'm here with Dr. Black Hackett, the author of a new book called The Diversity Illusion. Dr. Black Hackett, before you jump into that, and I think as a setup to you talking about the book and why you wrote it and what you hope to accomplish with the book, obviously, over the last, let's say, 3/4 of a year, a lot of the work that you've done both in the Biden administration as well as earlier in your career in Virginia, it's fair to say is being undone. I'll say it whether you will or not. And for some, that has been a cause of hopelessness. Now, as a person of faith, I'm like, if you look at the journey, there's always ebbs and flows, backs and forth, but the arc of justice always bends, or the arc always bends forward. Whatever Dr. King said, you know what I'm saying.
Right.
Uh, but my point is that my view as a person of faith is we have to take a longer view than we do with the swings of the pendulum of political history and political and economic change. That said, you've done a lot of this work. You were the inaugural person in your position in a presidential administration. How do you view things in the current environment now? How do you approach your life and work? And how does that lead into you writing this book?
Absolutely. And it's amazing you use the word hopelessness because that's what I'm feeling that's what people are feeling. And a friend of mine, Dr. Medina, has these necklaces. And I was like, I got to get one. So I have my hope necklace on today. And I have been pushing because I believe that there is hope. I really do. And I'm not just one, I'm typically a pessimistic person,
Mm.
honestly, but I am very optimistic about the DEIA in this current environment. And I know it doesn't look like it, but I know the work that I've put into it. And so, yes, it definitely it's a war against diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility. And it does seem as if most of what we're doing has been rolled back. But there are also ways that made sure that we've embedded DEIA into the systems, into the policies and procedures. And for me, God, I know that it's God given me the wisdom to put language in there that maybe everybody else don't understand what they mean, but I do because I've been doing this work for a long time. So that is the hope that I have, is that it will continue because it's sustainable and it's not dependent on just one person. But the truth be told is we're in this environment where faith can't be the only thing that we are pushing. We have to have faith and works. So we have to be part of the solution. We have to be strategists in this environment and proactive. One of the things that I believe about certain parties, and I try to stay as bipartisan as possible with certain parties, but as well as Christendom, is that we are always reacting to things and not being proactive. And so for me, part of writing this book was because after the current administration was the start date on January 20th of 2025, and things just started coming, rolling down very negatively. I was getting so many phone calls and emails requesting interviews and for my presence to be keynote speaker, come to this panel, help us understand this language. Well, I'm okay with doing that. I was happy to do it. But I also realized that journalists just wanted a story and they didn't even understand what diversity, equity, inclusion, accessibility was and what it was not. And so I was trying to give language, like I would stop them and say, before we have this interview, let's talk about this because I'm not going to answer these questions because they were surface level questions and they were not getting to the root of what's happening. And so I know I'm not the only one of my colleagues that's doing this by getting the information out, but I felt like if I can scale this, if I can write, all of these talking points and speeches I was writing, I was like, maybe I should write a book. And then my mentor was like, write a book. And you know who my mentor is, Dr. Trim. She said, write a book. And I had no intention of writing a book, but I wanted to put some information out because the people who are speaking the loudest are often the ones that are the most heard, and they're wrong. And so they're putting out this narrative that DEIA equals Black communities or DEIA equals Black hires. That is exactly what DEIA isn't. DEIA is about creating a fair opportunity, whether it's programs because of funding, whether it is the hiring process and procedures, or the way that we recruit people into the job market or into colleges and university. We don't talk about legacy admissions, but we want to talk about admissions that considers race or gender. And so I wanted to put language and to ensure that I wrote something, while it is definitely research heavy, it is written in plain language for the everyday reader. It's that person who's watching Fox News or CNBC and wondering, why are we talking about diversity, equity, inclusion so much? Well, I have given you a book where there is language to help you have these conversations at the table for Thanksgiving. If you have questions, if you secretly want to learn about it, I wanted to provide that. So this is why I wrote the book, is to really talk about this illusion that's out there about what DEIA is and how much we've succeeded. So many corporations started out, after the George Floyd murders and said, "Oh, we're going to be all Black Lives Matter and we want to make sure we have the diversity statement on our websites." But we realized that this was just performative. They really did not look within to ensure that they were looking at and shifting the power of what's going on. And so just to talk about this illusion, like you think that it's one thing, but it's not. And then at the very end, I give a little bit of a solution base. I didn't want to put it all out there so people can roll it back. You can call me and, we can talk about it, but really providing some opportunities and some language to how we can actually ensure that we are fair and just across the board.
What you said is kind of the foundation of my optimism, and I'm going to use the word that you use, embed.
Mhm.
Um, what we're really talking about is culture, and not just the culture of a nation, but cultures of individual organizations,
Mhm.
states, cities, countries, corporations. And one of the things that we predicted in my work at Black Enterprise, first of all, we learned early on, 20 years ago, that the lens of diversity could not just be about Black.
Mhm.
Even if it was inspired by the civil rights movement, that diversity was all those things. We're talking about accessibility, especially. And these are all intersectional things. And that intersectionality is where the embeddedness comes in, because you really can't dismantle it if that's your goal for one group without dismantling it for everybody. And then once you start trying to dismantle it for everybody, you see how not only inherently unfair it is, but it's practically unworkable. And
Exactly.
corporations are quietly having this conversation about, we're not trying to break the law over here, but what we're being asked to do is really not practical in terms of our ability to do business effectively, serve customers effectively, serve our workers effectively, and they're caught between this rock and a hard place. But my thing is, that's where the hope is, that now this idea of justice and fairness and accessibility, it really is part of our culture. It's been part of our culture as a nation for 50 years, and it's going to take more than just a temporary rollback to undo what's already been embedded in our culture in a country that's becoming more diverse, generation by generation by generation, and happens to be our competitive advantage
Mhm. You're right.
against the rest of the world. Either they got to cooperate with us, or they have to compete, and nobody wants to compete with a country as diverse as ours. And all you got to do is look at the Olympics, and
Mhm.
you can't
Yeah.
all the winning teams, no matter what country, got people from all, you look at France and it looked like American teams looked like 20 years ago with all kinds of people from all over the place. Listen, you can tell I'm having fun with this conversation. We got to wrap up for this segment, but hold that thought. I can see you. You had something.
No problem.
I'm going to get you in the next segment. Listen, guys, I'm having a great conversation. I know you are too, enjoying it with Dr. Black Hackett, author of the new book, The Diversity of Illusion. Hold tight. We'll be right back with Be Lifted Up Radio, your guide to living an abundant life. Welcome back to Be Lifted Up Radio, your guide to living an abundant life. Dr. Black Hackett, I know you was about to drop something. Let's get on with it.
Yeah, so I wanted to say, on your point about just accessibility and thinking about how the country is diverse, from the origin of the United States of America, the Constitution, it was written with one demographic group in mind, and that was the white, cisgender, which is straight Christian male. So from my understanding, the people who signed that document were not out of the closet. There were no women in the room. If there were Black or American indigenous in the room, they were probably servants or slaves. And there were no one who had a disability that we know of, right? So there was just one lens that wrote the system, the Constitution, where every other system, whether it's the banking system, mortgage, the financial system, housing and loans, all of those systems were written with one demographic group. And what DEIA does is, again, this balancing act. I don't think it's ever going to be a fair playing ground, but it's this balancing act of providing another chance, an opportunity, making sure that we try to bring in all, and that includes veterans, youth. Think about Job Corps. I was with the Department of Labor, the Job Corps. So many people who had an opportunity. Think about, I said veterans, youth, formerly incarcerated, those who are just as involved, who are re-entering into society. And then you have those who have a disability. You will be amazed at how something as simple as a software program needed on your laptop or your work computer for someone who has sight problems. And so they need a software program to speak the text is so hard. And therefore we end up losing those employees or not being able to hire because those accommodations cannot be met. And so you're thinking about all of those things. Then there's the LGBTQ group that we have to also consider. This is a diverse country and we have to consider those, but also rural America. When you think about those who live in rural America, they're not necessarily people of color. But when we had COVID-19 and we had young children who were forced to do schoolwork in their homes, we realized that so many homes did not have internet access. And so what did the Biden administration do? Sign the bipartisan infrastructure law. And one of the DEIA initiatives was ensuring that Wi-Fi got into rural communities. That too is a marginalized community. And so to say it's, DEIA equals Black communities, that is inaccurate. And so you're right. When you start trying to dismantle, you see how many demographical groups are impacted and affected. And that's why I wrote this book, is to say, listen, y'all, look, reading is fundamental. It's good, take your information from primary sources and not some of these networks and all of these other articles. Like, literally read the evidence here and think about, especially if you're a believer, the God that I serve, justice and fairness is all through the Bible. Actually, it's the second most popular word after love. It's in the Bible. It's justice and fairness when you translate it correctly. And so if you think about Jesus and his entire time on earth, it was a whole protest. He wasn't supposed to be here, and he came and he dealt with the demographic people who others did not want anything to do with. The woman at the well, the person who had to come through the roof to get healing, the children, whoever it was.
Yeah, you talk about all the marginalized groups.
All the marginalized.
Children are marginalized. We're marginalized in the Bible. Women were marginalized in the Bible. The lame, which we would call disabled today, were marginalized in the Bible.
Yes.
Any disability, you were marginalized in the Bible. And you're right, Jesus' whole ministry
The
Yeah.
eunuchs.
Yes,
They
absolutely.
were like the T and the LGBT. They were
Yeah,
on the outskirts of the city.
outskirts of
Let's
the
just be
city.
honest and real.
Yep, leprosy,
Lep-
mental health. If you were possessed by demons, mental health. So
Mental
you think
health. Come
about that.
on, Alfred.
But
Yeah.
bring that fast forward to the present, and I, we before we got on the air, we talked about how you better act right because you think people don't know you, but they do, and you act
Yes.
the way. But another way to look at that from a faith lens is that both biblically and today, it really is impossible to hurt another human being without some way hurting yourself.
That's right.
I mean, we're all interconnected. There's no way to say I'm gonna hurt this person, I'm gonna hurt this group of people, and it not be to your own detriment, especially in a world that's gotten smaller and smaller,
Mhm.
closer and closer. My grandfather would take him a month to get from one part of the country to the other. I can get on a plane tomorrow and be on the other side of the world in half a day.
Right.
And so our futures and our destinies as human beings are so intertwined. And in America in particular, you can be black, gay, disabled, multicultural, multiracial,
Mhm.
immigrant, military. Like now,
Right.
you can be all of that in one person.
Yes.
And how do you undo that level of just it being integrated into being a human being
Mhm.
that's just put together differently than the human being next to you, but all the important things you have in common are in common, including the fact that we need to eat, we need useful work, we
Mhm.
need shelter, we need safety and security, all of those things that we need. And that when you look at the walk of Jesus, was like you said, love, justice, and fairness. Now, I never heard it put it that way before, but you're right.
Yeah.
Love, justice, and fairness are the major themes of the Bible.
Major.
And whenever we go away from that, we all suffer. We all suffer.
So right. So right. And this is why I offer my services to corporations because I know it's hard to figure out the landscape right now. And
That, and that's the work of ABH Solutions. Just
yeah. Oh yes,
yeah,
ABS.
yes. Please talk about that.
Sure. So I'm doing consultancy right now. And it's hard because so many people want my work, but they don't want to put it on paper, because they're afraid of the backlash. But there are ways that we can embed this work into the policies and the systems. To me, you cannot look at it from a surface level. We're going to have a diversity statement. No, you really have to look at your policies, procedures, and it cannot be added on as, oh, now let's look at it from a diversity lens. Oh, so we're going to have an event. So let's look, we're going to plan the whole event. And then we think about, well, what if somebody who's disabled attends? No. In your planning meeting, you want to ensure that there is an ambassador in that room who asks the question, have we considered if there's someone who has wheelchair accessibility, right? Where are we going to have the seating? Do we need ASL, which is a sign language, right? We need, first of all, we should be having it everywhere now. Sign language and closed captioning because of COVID-19, everything is virtual now. It might be in person, but it's virtual. You need that closed captioning, but this should not be an add-on, an afterthought. This should be embedded in your conversations, in your policies and procedures. And this is how we have to look at DEIA as the whole. Look to see who's not in the room. We will make mistakes. We won't cross all our T's and dot the I's, but if we give good effort to do so, because we have the understanding that this is a diverse country. So I offer consultancy so that I can help corporations and businesses and HR departments find the way to have a collaborative intelligence team. Like, how do you build teams? How do you build around your HR policies and still have DEIA? You don't have to name it because I know how to walk around it. I have HR, I have organization development, degree as well. So I know how to do the ins and outs of it. And that's the difference between people who get a quick certificate and somebody who's been doing this for a while. We know how to do it and to have the ability and privilege to influence all the way to the top in the White House for all of workforce. I learned so much. And so I offer that. And you can find me at AlaysiaBlackHackett.com if you it's some information there. And I love helping corporations and companies understand that looking at DEIA is so much more than just, oh, let's try to hire more people, more women. And no, it's so much more. It's about your culture. This is a cultural transformation. This is about how you the ins and outs and the what do I call them? The unspoken rules of corporations. You know, you have what's written, and then you know something's going on, but you can't really feel it. That's that quantity. That's that qualitative.
It's
But
what's written versus what's real.
yes.
And you got to get to what's real. Listen, hold that thought. We're going to be right back. This is another great edition of Be Lifted Up Radio, your guide to living an abundant life. We're having a powerful conversation with a powerful guest, Dr. Black Hackett. Sit tight. We'll be right back. You know, we're back with Dr. Black Hackett. We're talking about diversity and equity and inclusion and fairness and all those things, justice, love, all those things that are part of the walk of Jesus in the context of the current environment that we are operating in as we try to make a better world for everyone. Listen, Dr. Black Hackett, you know, we talk about the term DEI in particular, which kind of got politicized. And again, this is another source of my optimism overall. I'm much older than you are. I've seen different versions of this movie over the my nearly 40 years at Black Enterprise in particular. And one of the things I'll quote John Hope Bryant of Operation Hope, who says this: it's less about what you call it and more about what you're trying to accomplish it.
That's right.
He's like, I don't care whether it's called DEI or not. We don't care if it's called affirmative action. We don't think of all the different names that this work has been called. And he said, when all is said and done, and this is what corporations are working with, like you said, they're still doing this work. The ones that because they're like, we have to do this work, not because we're nice corporations, but in order to achieve the results we want for our shareholders and for our customers and for our workers and for the communities we serve, we have to do this work. So a lot of it's happening quietly. They're like, well, we're not going to name it, we're not going to label it, but we're going to continue to work on these things because sooner or later we have to address these issues. You know, in that context, talk about the larger question in my mind of the economic realities. Let's talk about corporate America in particular. They have to be able to do business. And even if they take away all of the altruism and Jesus and faith, they have to serve a marketplace that's a very, very diverse marketplace. They have to hire from that marketplace. They have to do business with people in that marketplace. And the truth is, what we found out with Black Enterprise is those companies that had an embedded, like you said, on purpose, cultural commitment to this work in their DNA, they're not thinking about whether they're going to still do it. They're just saying, okay, how do we do it now? Mm-hmm. It's not if we're going to do it or we're not going to do it. It's like giving them new guardrails of laws and decisions and policies. It's how we do it. It's not whether we do it. And I know a big part of your work is, okay, these are the new quote unquote rules. It's the new environment. But if this work still has to be done, you need to think about how to do it. You know, talk about that, because there are companies, you know, I won't name them, but we work with them a lot with Black Enterprise. They're like, we're still committed to this work. Even if we can't call it what we used to call it, we're committed to this work. But that requires some intentionality on the leaders of organizations as well as the people who embody those organizations.
Yes, some of my former colleagues that I know are in big corporations right now. The work is still getting done. They're rebranding. Okay. And I know at the beginning of this year, I wouldn't name and put language to it and, you know, anything like that. But now everybody knows they're rebranding. And we know that because, again, you talked about the several iterations of this work: affirmative action, urban affairs,
Yes.
multicultural affairs, diversity affairs, intercultural affairs. Like it's
community relations. I remember that one.
I mean, just so much. And again, for me, I don't care what you call it, do the work. And when companies look at the return on investment, they have to. They have to look at the customer and look at the communities that they're serving or want to serve. Second of all, and I've been saying in my other interviews, look at the data. Data is the jewel, and data doesn't lie. I'm going to add, because of the information that came out today about the new labor numbers, data can be skewed. You know,
Yes.
numbers can be lied to and skewed, as we saw just today. If you haven't seen it, look at the news, where a new person came in with a new jobs report stating that Black Americans have increased by, I think, 40% jobs in the last 8 months. It's such a lie. But again, data can be skewed, but the numbers, the disaggregated data, which are raw numbers, does not lie. And so my suggestion to corporations is to continue to pull as much data as you can. Don't mix and mingle, because people can do people of color, right? And people of color can be various races. It's not just black, African or African American or Caribbean American, right? It is all of those plus Asian American, Native Hawaiian Pacific Islander. It is African diaspora. Now we have Middle Eastern, North African. Okay, so you have to disaggregate the data and ensure that you are looking at the raw numbers to see how you need to be impactful in your community. Because what we have to understand, that this is not just a fight for our democracy. This is our human rights that's being assaulted at this time, and we have to stand up for human rights and understand that we have to push whatever we need to so that we can have dignity. This is a moral and ethical issue that we're dealing with right now, when people can just say and do what they want to because they feel like it. There is no thought about our neighbors. And I know some people who are in different wealth brackets. My husband is an entrepreneur, and they're like, well, these policies are going to help us, and they will help us. But how do we forsake those who are social economically, oppressed? We have to be thinking about that. And so this is why I wrote the book, The Diversity Illusion, to think about strategies to dismantling this diversity illusion of what people think it is and what it actually is. And here's the thing I really want to stress. Equity is the center of everything. It is the glue that puts everything together. It is the egg inside of a cake that becomes the bonding agent. It is what everything is centered around equity. And I know a lot of times people, again, add equity on, but when you really think about it, you are able to be sustainable and balanced because of equity and the diversity in your companies. And so we have to shift the way we look at DEIA and not look at it as something borrowed or something like a frosting on a cake, as my colleague Janice Underwood says. It's not frosting on a cake, because if you don't like frosting after, what you going to do? Scrape it off,
Yes.
right? But it needs to be baked into the cake with the eggs, the milk, the flour, the butter, and the sugar. And so once you mix it, you cannot separate it. But people are looking at DEIA as the frosting when actually it's the egg. And so I just really want everybody to change the trajectory of how they're talking about DEIA. And hopefully the book, The Diversity Illusion, can help you with that. You can go to my website at diversityillusion.com. That's ILLUIUSION. There's the illusion with the E, but it's the I illusion. Diversityillusion.com. Find it there. You can also go to Amazon. It's on Amazon. Just type my name, and I'm sure you can spell it Alaysia Black Hackett. And then my website is the same, but so are my social media handles, Alaysia_Black Hackett, Hackett. You can find me on social media. I would love to connect with you, get some feedback from what you read, and tell me what you want to know more of, because this conversation will not stop. And because I am optimistic about it, because I know I'm a fighter. And at the end of the day, we're going to keep pushing and pressing, because we know that this is the right thing to do. Diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility is absolutely the right thing to do. And it's time to really look at dismantling the antiquated systems and embedding equity throughout.
You talk about equity, and people talk about the meaning. I said equity means ownership, and ownership means you have a stake.
You have a
You have a stake in outcomes. And I said, look at the total history of our country. Like you said, it started out with only one demographic group being taken into consideration. But every time a new group had a stake in the outcome, had gained equity in the outcome, even if it was messy, even if it was a civil war, the country moved forward exponentially. That there's always been a benefit when everybody who's here feels like I have a stake in this. I have equity in what's going to happen. I have access. I have opportunity. I have a voice, and that innovation from that diversity is why a country as young as ours caught up so quickly to longer established countries and civilizations around the world because of that diversity. And so, I could say in the short run, you can say, okay, We don't want people to have a stake, but the more people have a stake, no matter who they are and where they fit into the American culture, the faster and the better it is for the whole nation. And to me, that truth is going to win out no matter what happens. Listen, such a great pleasure to have you on the show. Thank you for joining us on Be Lifted Up Radio, Dr. Black Hackett.
I appreciate you having me, and I enjoyed the conversation with you.
Listen, guys, I promised, I delivered. This is going to be a great show. We had a great guest and a great conversation. Sit tight, and we'll be right back. What a powerful, powerful conversation with a powerful, powerful woman of faith. Dr. Alaysia Black Hackett really crystallized the connection between the things that we are experiencing today in 2025 and connecting that back to faith, the walk of Jesus, the mission of Jesus, and in so doing kind of gives us a roadmap, if you will, a guiding post to how we should operate in a really rapidly changing environment, no matter what your politics are, no matter what your beliefs are, no matter where you fall on the spectrum of the changes that we're enduring right now as a nation and as a world. Here's the good thing. Faith is your North Star. The example of Jesus is your North Star. And when you read her book, when you follow her work, you'll get an idea of how to make a decision for yourself about how best to really live out your mission as a person of faith who believes in abundant life, not just for yourself, but for everybody else. Listen, thanks again to Dr. Alaysia Black Hackett. You're listening to Be Lifted Up Radio, your guide to living an abundant life. You can catch this episode on beliftedup.com along with all past episodes of the show, or mochapodcastnetwork.com. You can follow Be Lifted Up Radio on YouTube and all the other social platforms, IG, Facebook, X. You can catch our show on Sirius XM 141 HUR Voices on Sundays, Tuesdays, and Thursdays at 5 p.m. Listen, if you didn't hear it live, listen to the replay and you won't be disappointed. I'm Alfred Edmond Jr., your host of Be Lifted Up Radio, your guide to living an abundant life, and we will see you next time.